Right off the bat, before we begin this, I just want to make one thing very clear. This isn't clickbait. I sincerely feel this way, and what I'm speaking on is something that I actually do believe. These obsessions with fast aperture lenses, this obsession with the blurriest background and creamiest bokeh and only isolating your subject, well, not only, every time isolating your subject to the max with every single portrait just because eye autofocus can make that happen. These images not only look very boring and the same and plain to me now, it also just looks very unprofessional and easy. And I don't mean it unprofessional in the way that you carry yourself. I mean unprofessional in the fact that anyone walking on the street can take the same photo with their camera. Anyone walking on the street can take the same photo with your camera if you hand it to them. Anyone walking on the street could probably take that with a moment lens and an iPhone, and it looked very, very similar after editing. And to me, this obsession that we have now with having to have 1.2 and 1.0 and shooting everything wide open, it hasn't led to more creative shots. If anything, it's just led to the same damn thing over and over and over again, to the point to where it looks like in photography, at times, there's no creative freedom, there's no desire to be creatively free, and there's no challenge to be able to use the things that we spend so much time on: outfits, hair, makeup, searching for venues, lighting. Use these things in a way to actually make impact and add detail to the shot, because you're not going to pay attention because you can't notice any of the detail in any of the small details. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Talking to Myself, the part of the day where I talk to myself about things that I was thinking the night before while laying in bed. Shout out to all 6,000 of you who are subscribed at the time of me making this video. Truly do appreciate that. I never ask anyone to subscribe, so it means a lot. And if you don't like any of the things that I'm saying, you can always click the subscribe button, click it from subscribe to unsubscribed, and you don't have to watch anything ever again. It's been a misconception that people don't understand they can do that, but you don't have to subscribe. Find what works for you and go with it. But what works for me is this opinion that, you guys, I don't really buy into the whole idea, this whole movement of these fast aperture lenses. And listen, it doesn't mean that I've never blown out a background and isolated the subject shooting wide open. I have quite a bit, honestly, and there are certain situations where this is definitely needed. You should, whether it's because you have a nasty, ugly background behind you, whether it's because it's going to add more effect because of the lighting or the mood, or whether it's because in a certain situation, this is what was asked for. Fast aperture portraits, shooting wide open, having a lot of bokeh and a lot of background separation, it is necessary in some points. But it's this movement that we have had ever since the Sony a7 III came out and completely revolutionized photography. Shout out to Sony for that. They changed photography forever, because with their eye autofocus, the stickiness that it had, and the ability to, no matter where you're at, be able to shoot wide open and be able to have tack sharp focus on the eye, because of them, this is the norm, not just for portraits, but for every single type of photography. I see it all the time in street photography with people who use autofocus. I see it all the time in event photography and in documentary photography, where your environment in those three is probably the most important part of the photo, speaking to the singular subject. And I also see it in things like wedding photography and portrait photography, not only just for headshots, but also for in studio or with family, where you have multiple subjects together to where you're fine if someone's out of focus, because guess what looks better than, having everyone in focus and having a little bit of detail in the background to a lot of people? It's having that blurry background. It's something that to me is honestly a cop-out for a lot of people, because when you come into photography and you come in and take these photos, I'm very inclusive. I believe that everyone should grab a camera, everyone should document their life. But it's this idea that if I can't create a set, or if I can't pick the venue, or if I don't know what's going on, I can just shoot wide open and it's going to get a beneficial and a positive response from, first and foremost, photographers. And now, because clients can do this on their cell phone, because iPhone and Google Pixel have a portrait mode, now it's recognized by them. And so it's the easier thing to do. But the only thing about it is, what do we do now that every single person's photos look exactly the same? What do we do now that we spend all this time and money on set design, on clothes, on a venue, and we are charging customers to go to these places or provide the outfits or to scout and find the areas that they need to go? but you can't tell anything about anything anywhere you go. It's so funny to me that this isn't just something that is happening just on the Instagram. You know, everyone blames Instagram for every trend in photography, but this has been something that's been going on since about 2012, when a couple of certain YouTubers were talking about how they use the term professional look when it came to bokeh. But when I turn through the pages of books from, many of the people that we consider greats, whether it's an Henri Cartier-Bresson, whether it's a Steve McCurry, shout out Steve McCurry, Annie Leibovitz, shout out Annie Leibovitz, William Eggleston, even on the street, Joel Meyerowitz on the street, even whenever he's taking his street portraits, even Gordon Parks is a fantastic example of this. I have the book right over there. Not everything was shot wide open. And a lot of the beauty and the professionalism in the images was the ability to use the area around every single part of their subject in order to bring it into the full theme and mood of the actual shoot, whether it's in portrait, whether it's out in the street, whether it's street photography, whether it is an event, whether it is documenting a situation. It was never a moment of I have to isolate. It was never a moment of I have to separate, but it was always I want to bring everything into this. And to me, it's just crazy how there will be people who talk about these are the greats, these are the people I like, these are the people that make the best photos, and these are the people that we should learn from. But you're only learning in the idea of just their ideals, not in what they practice. Because if you were, and I'm not saying this is everyone, but why is it that fast apertures and separating every single part of a human being from the environment around them, that tells the detail and the story that they either requested or that is just a natural part of their life, is removed? And again, I'm not saying that I hate this and that this is something that shouldn't be done. I do this as well. I shoot wide open at times. I'm going to show you some clips of me whenever I went out and about, and I was shooting yesterday in a studio session and some things like that. And there were a couple times in that studio session where I shot wide open whenever I was getting close up for an even closer portrait, just because I wanted to be able to have that little bit of fall off. I use that strategically. But for the rest of the shots, I want to make sure that my subject and the things around my subject not only have clarity and detail, but just tie in together. It's the idea that the different fabrics, the different fillings of the cloth, of the textures of the walls, the textures of the paper, of when you're outside, the textures of nature behind you, all these different things blend in together to be able to create this painting of light that makes it palatable for each and every single person. Now, a lot of people have said to me before, I'm very elitist. I am someone who is very get off my lawn when it comes to a lot of things. And I am fine with being called that. It doesn't bother me because they're my opinions, and it's things that have been developed based on the experiences I've had. From documentary and sports photography, I have learned in event photography, and even again, shooting weddings or portraits, I have learned that one of the best ways to not only make your work stand out, but to be able to convey an opinion, an emotion, or just information about a surrounding situation, street photography, all these different things, is to capture the essence of everything behind you. That doesn't mean you're shooting at f8, f11, f16 every single time you take a photo, but it does mean that you do have the creative right, privilege, and freedom and responsibility to at times not just shoot wide open, but also to maybe stop down to, first and foremost, for everyone out there who bitches every time that a lens isn't very, very sharp. Oh, is it sharp? Is it sharp? Is it sharp? But you only shoot it wide open, which in 99% of lenses is never going to be anywhere near the sharpest that a lens actually gets, unless it's a really bad copy. It doesn't mean that I have to only shoot like that at f16, f11, f8 to be able to tell a story. I can still shoot at an f2, which is going to get me a little bit shallower depth of field, still a little bit of separation, more detail on my subject to be able to show off beautiful dresses, beautiful suits, beautiful shirts, jewelry, to be able to show off things behind them a little bit, to give a little peek and the essence of what it is going on around them. That is a big deal. Stopping down to f2.8, f4 is something that in an environment outdoors is something that I've done a lot, regardless of if I've had a neutral density filter or a variable neutral density filter or not. You see, one of the things that a lot of people love to do right about now is they're going to go and no matter what, I'll be damned, I'm going to shoot wide open regardless. I'm going to get on top of a place in the middle of daylight, and if I can't shoot at 1.2, I'm going to crank that shutter speed all the way up to 1/3000th, 4,000th, whatever, so that I can be able to shoot wide open, because that's my creative flow. And there's nothing wrong with that creative flow. But what I'm saying is, what do I do whenever I see a million photos? Forget color science, forget all these other things that people tell you matter about it, and this is what separates this camera and whatnot. When I see a photo between a 50mm f1.0 from Fujifilm and a 50mm f1.2 between Canon, I can't tell the difference. Why? Because they're both 50mm lenses and they're both very, very close in that depth of field. Now, listen, I know some people will tell you actually on Fujifilm that would be a 75mm focal length. It's not. You guys, let's learn something really quickly. You don't apply crop factor to aperture, and you don't apply crop factor to focal length. Why? Because focal length is focal length. If that 50mm on Fujifilm was put onto a full frame camera, it would become a 50mm focal length. But because it's on a crop factor, you apply crop factor to field of view. And so because of that, whenever I have a 50mm and we're assigning depth of field, it is always focal length multiplied by the aperture or whatever, add that together, that's going to get you your depth of field. So a 50mm is a 50mm is a 50mm, the same way a 23mm and 18mm, they're all the same. So let's stop applying crop factor to aperture. Let's stop applying crop factor to, focal length. It's just on field of view, okay? So your depth of field is still that of a 50mm. But you wouldn't be able to tell those two apart, especially if you frame them up the exact same way and you maybe crop into that 50mm from Canon. You wouldn't be able to tell them apart. With any of the cameras that are out and about right now, you can get any camera you want. And if all you're doing is shooting wide open at f1.4, f1.2, guess what? No one's going to be able to tell the difference. So why are we spending all this money on all these cameras whenever not only is no one going to be able to tell the difference professionally, and I'm being honest, listen you guys, if you want to sit there and tell me that you can tell the difference, you're a damn lie and it's annoying. Stop. People edit their images after and post. You can't tell the difference. Stop lying. You can't tell the difference. And so because of that, I have to ask, if I can't tell the difference as a professional and even as a client, what's the difference between you and them taking a photo on their phone in portrait mode and then going and editing it? Sincerely, it doesn't take that much skill. I could walk outside right now and hand my camera to someone who, maybe doesn't know much about anything and tell them, hey, it's back button focus. So press this, and when there's a dot on my eye, take the photo. Guess what? Me and that person will take the exact same type of portrait. There's nothing that's going to change. Everyone is able to discern what is in frame and what isn't in frame. Yeah, there may be a different in headroom. There may be a difference in left to right. Nothing you can't crop. And it doesn't mean you're going to get a bad photo. Listen, the cameras do 95% of the work for the photographer when it comes to nailing focus, exposure, and everything else, especially with live view EVF. So what does it take to be able to separate yourself whenever it comes to photography, whenever it comes to this whole thing with shallow depth of field? Listen, you guys, I challenge you. Stop down your lenses, because guess what? Telling a story with more information doesn't hurt the story. And listen, if you don't like the term telling a story about portraits and things like that, then don't call it a story. But taking a photo and being able to display more than just blurry background, blurry background, blurry background, if someone chose a portraits to be taken at a place that they liked the venue, show that venue. Stop down, take photos. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your portfolio. It just may take a little bit more work with, number one, learning how to light, and number two, learning how to position yourself and learning how to set design. In studio, I love it because the ability to be able to create things and move things around and be able to put things together is so fun for me. I think it's so enjoyable to be able to try to get things to work and see how they fit based on people's outfits and everything, and being able to see the textures, the colors, and the feeling between every single one of them and how they integrate with each other is something that I just enjoy. Here, the lamp, a beanie just for texture. And so another thing is these two pieces will be interchangeable. We'll go from there, but yeah, these two pieces will be interchangeable. Okay, a little bit of glow from there, but it's going to make it look like this light back here is helping light them back there. So that's why I want to bring it in subtly to where it looks like this glow is bright enough to light that. It is fun, and honestly, more than anything, it means every single time I'm going out and shooting, my shit don't look the same. It don't look the same as yours. It don't look the same as what I did before. It's something that can be new and fresh every single time. And when it comes to this idea that, okay, I'm an old man shaking my fist, talking about, oh, I don't like bokeh, I don't like this, or the good old days and stuff like that. Listen, this is what the photographers that we all idolize do. There's an amazing and very, very interesting photo that was taken by Jason Roman. He goes by @StockEasy here on YouTube and on Instagram. And it's a beautiful photo of the street photographer great Bruce Gildan. Now, the photo is him amongst roses, what is called Bruce Gildan amongst roses. And it's a very interesting photo because it tells a couple of different things about a story. First off, Bruce is seen as a man who's very like concrete more than a rose, not very flowery, very in your face, moving in and out, and very blunt. He's a very blunt person. And he's amongst these roses standing right there. And the amount of detail that comes across from the roses to him is very beautiful and a very telling story. Now, if Jason was to have him step up, StockEasy was to have him step up and then blow that background out and take a portrait of him, would you get that same feeling between those images? You wouldn't. There would be no difference, or there would be huge difference between the two. It would just be another photo of a man that we like and would have gotten a like because, shot it at 1.4 on a Summilux versus a photo with a lot more detail, less depth of field, but more impact because you're seeing the environment around someone who is seen by some to be a curmudgeon or to be very prickly and thorny as the stems of a rose itself. This is the stuff that I'm talking about whenever it comes to the depth of field. Gazin, shout out Gazin, by the way. That dude's work has inspired me throughout the ages. But one of the things I love about his work, and you look at his work recently with Leica, is him stopping down. He uses shallow depth of field a lot. But the stories that he tells whenever he's traveling around the world, they're some of the best because of the environment he's catching. Volandis is someone else who is very good about this. Troy Ezekiel on Instagram, he is someone that's they're very great about this with environmental portraiture, with portraits that aren't always stopped down or wide open, I apologize, with portraits that have the detail surrounding the person being the detail that contributes to what is going on in the photo. And I love it. It's amazing. It's so much more than just a regular blown out background portrait. It's something that is so much more than just another face. It's a face in an area, and it tells me something that I can believe about the subject, whether it's the subject's community, whether it's the subject's upbringing, the subject's culture, the subject's identity, or even the subject's, whatever their cause is, whatnot, and what have you. That is a huge, huge deal.
The camera itself did not give me any particular courage to go into places that sort. It was, I felt the need for me to somehow or another use humanity to get people to become aware of how people suffered. That was what drove me into it. Not to get a beautiful picture, or not to get a great picture, or anything of that sort. It was always the need possibly to befriend an impoverished family, or to help a poor boy, a poor girl, to expose something to the public that I felt was being hidden. As long as the camera was on the right side, I felt that I should be there working away with it.
I challenge you guys to try to do these things, to try. It's not that your work isn't great or that your work isn't fantastic. It's just that what do you do when you look exactly the same as everyone else? You guys, how many generic brand, you go on Amazon and you type anything up, you're gonna have the name brand, and how many generic brand, whatnot, and what have yous are after that? How many of them are there and they don't even have any reviews, and it's just blind test to see if something's gonna work? That's the way our photography comes off whenever we don't have any variation between us and what is the industry norm. So listen, again, I don't want people to think that I'm the old guy shaking his fist at the world and shaking his fist at clouds and screaming, but I am. Because sincerely, this fast aperture whole lens rush that has totally ruined the compact camera system, CCS, that mirrorless format was supposed to be. Now we got these big ass lenses that honestly not only make the kit heavier, but also hurt things like internal, like IBIS image stabilization, because again, your camera's having to compensate for this big ass lens and heavy and long lens that now you're having to hold and try to maneuver. Not only has it hurt that and totally changed that whole gear up, but it's boring. It looks the same every time someone does it. There's no variation. And not only have I never been a fan of just doing that solely as the only way to get through a wedding, to get through an event, to get through XYZ, But honestly, I think it looks kind of childish because this phone right here with one of my moment lenses, I'm not lying to you, I can take the exact same images and portraits just with this. With that being said, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. If you did get a little bit too offended, let me know down in the comments. I don't care, but it's up to you, buddy. So with that being said, take it light, but take it. Have a good one.